The downtown East Side Economic Revitalization. Good afternoon. I don't think your mic is on there. Do you want to try again?
Can you hear me from this?
Perfect.
This as well? Thank you very much. The presentation that I would hope to do this afternoon is on the Downtown East Side Economic Revitalization Plan that's being proposed to take out for public discussion by the Vancouver Agreement partners. This is a plan that's been developed over the last few years, and we're at a point now where we feel we need to bring that plan together, to take it out to the community, and then to come back to you with specific recommendations for action for the city's position on this plan. So the recommendations in the council report are first to receive the plan for information, and then to have us report back to you in the spring when we've completed the consultation. This afternoon, I'll be briefly reviewing the essence of that plan so that people can have a sense of what's in it. Also briefly reviewing the Vancouver Agreement's employment strategy, and then showing how these two will be linked together with some explicit institutional arrangements. And finally, the process leading to an explicit action plan with our partners in the senior governments, the business and local community. Start by showing the context map of the downtown east side. It's a large area stretching from the central business district at Richard Street all the way over toward Grandview Woodland at Clark Drive. And the reason we show this map is to show that there's a tremendous amount of development going on right around the downtown east side. The downtown business district, Falls Creek North, International Village, Citygate are all building out. And we have, as you know, major proposals for the southeast shore of Falls Creek Flats, and the expansion of the port. So there's two things that this map says. First, part of the reason why the downtown east side has been experiencing problems over the last number of years is that we've been very successful in developing our inner city, so that some issues that have been spread across the inner city are now more concentrated. But secondly, that the downtown east side will inevitably revitalize. And the key for the Vancouver Agreement, and what's been city council policy for a number of years, has been to revitalize the downtown east side in a way that benefits rather than displaces the people who live and work there now. And so that this economic plan that we'll be reviewing is very much consistent with other major initiatives of the Vancouver Agreement, particularly with respect to health and safety, as well as housing. And you'll see how that works in the development of the plan. It's consistent with those initiatives. We believe it'll contribute to those initiatives, but in fact, to achieve our objectives, it's absolutely dependent on those initiatives. So there's been a lot of work by the government partners, as well as the business community and the community organizations in the downtown east side over the last number of years. And I'm not going to list all of them, but just to give a few quick illustrations. The tremendous work we've done on the Chinatown revitalization with the more than 25 community organizations, and help from the senior governments to rebuild some of the physical infrastructure. One of the key points being the Chinatown Gate, which was recently constructed. And these initiatives are really coming together. Well, this weekend there was a significant increase in the numbers of people coming to historic Chinatown for the New Year's celebration. There's a general sense that Chinatown is back and opening, and there's much more to be done there, but that we have a good start. Lots of housing that's been built in the downtown east side. I use this as an illustration. The Sunrise Cafe, which the three governments contributed to, was renovated with our partner in the Portland Hotel Society. And it took one of the pubs that was one of the most dangerous premises in British Columbia, a place where a few years ago people were literally being taken out of the pub and stabbed to death in the middle of the day. The pub was closed. Immediately crime went down in the vicinity of that, and then the Portland Society reopened that to some of the hardest to house people in our community. and crime has remained down around that. And the ground floor pub has been replaced by the Sunrise Cafe, Co-op Radio, a dental clinic, a small laundry, lots of community enterprises and done in a way that's just compatible with the history of the area, as you can see in the renovation of the building. That's the sort of development that we're talking about in this plan. And finally, and I'll speak to this a little bit later, we were also doing considerable work to improve the linkages in the community, and work that will be taking place particularly in the vicinity of Carroll Street. But there's been many other public realm improvements in the area. So the key strategies of the plan are simply described. First is to increase the demand for services and products produced in the downtown east side, particularly by downtown east side residents, but products as well. Secondly, to strengthen the capacity of local businesses and enterprises to meet that demand. And then finally, and very important for us, is to provide employment opportunities for residents. So I'll speak to each of these points. We believe together they'll result in the economic revitalization of the area. In terms of increasing demand for downtown east side products, we did considerable research through a number of studies, but particularly the Downtown East Side Economic Capacity Study, which is available through the clerk. And we interviewed more than 200 local and downtown businesses to talk about how they see the economy of the area. They said if government did nothing else, improving safety and security and the perception of safety was the one thing that we should do to help revitalize the economy of the area. That doesn't meet all our other objectives, but that's the main economic piece that they require. Secondly, to take advantage of key economic drivers, and I'll speak a bit more about this. There's a lot of development taking place. We're contributing to some of this. Projects like the Woodwards projects, the 2010 Winter Games, but also Costco, the Trade and Convention Center, the proposed hospitals, other major development that's taking place in and around the downtown east side. To take advantage of these economic drivers requires clear institutional arrangements to do so. Otherwise, the yield won't be there for the community. Next, to promote the development of housing. First, again, in keeping with our principles, to secure and improve housing for local residents. A number of years ago, there were 10,000 single-room occupancy hotel rooms in the downtown east side. The three levels of government and the community have worked together to replace about 5,000 of these with social housing, better quality, better managed. Recently, Council adopted the single-room accommodation bylaw to help us manage the rate of change of the remaining stock, and we're coming forward with other tools to help ensure their economic viability. But when we talk about housing in this sense, we're also talking about market housing. We're already doing a considerable amount to help market housing, but there's explicit programs to make sure that we continue to attract market housing. Recently, we're seeing the build-out of Citygate, the build-out of International Village. Block 17 in the downtown east side has a proposal that's underway. There's other projects going on in Gastown, and we hope to yield development in residential development, even in historic Chinatown. So it's a key part of our strategy to rebuild the neighborhood, to save the historic buildings, and also to create more of a local market for other retail and commercial development. Creating strong neighborhood brands. We have sub-areas within the downtown east side, Chinatown, Gastown, other areas that are well known, but in many cases there isn't a clear notion of what the kinds of products that they sell. This is partly important so that customers know what's available, but also in terms of attracting businesses. What businesses are we seeking in the downtown east side? How the business groups in that area can work with the community to attract new businesses or to develop them in a way that will reinforce one another. And finally, to upgrade the appearance and strengthen links in the downtown east side, we've put particular attention to improvements in the public realm. The improvements to Victory Square Park was done with various parts of the community, the veterans, local educational institutions, businesses, and local residents. We've done a job of doing most of the renovation of that park, but also paying a lot of attention to programming the park in a way that's inclusive to all the diverse parts of that community. One of the key initiatives that we're moving forward with now is the Carroll Greenway. We've identified this because it's a key linkage between the heart of Gastown at Maple Tree Square, shown in the left picture, to the cultural heart of Chinatown at the Sun Yat-sen Gardens and Chinese Cultural Center. And in between is the intersection of Carroll and Hastings, the location of Pigeon Park, and also the new interurban gallery, also the Pennsylvania Hotel. We believe that this can be a strong physical linkage for residents and for others visiting the area, and help create both economic opportunity as more people visit the area, and also a focal point for some of our other programs to help save the historic core of the buildings that are surrounding this or near this intersection. We've also established the Carroll Greenway Stewardship Committee, made up of strong representatives from all three communities that are working together on this initiative and related initiatives, and starting to bring more cohesion to what was a few years ago significant conflict among groups. So this is, in summary, how we hope to increase demand for downtown Eastside products. And before leaving that, just focus on the Woodwards project for one moment. The Woodwards building that the city now owns is of particular importance. It's a key economic driver for the revitalization of the downtown East Side. Part of this is because of the importance of the building. When the building closed in the early 90s, that signaled to the downtown East Side and to surrounding communities the death of many other small businesses that were related to it. It was the closing of Hastings Street. We believe that the reopening of Woodwards will signal make a different kind of signal. And we put particular care and attention into a good public process that really engages the entire community and is already starting to pay off as developers are realizing there are real investment opportunities in this community. The key to Woodwards for us is making sure that it keeps true to the symbol of its past, in that it was a place for the entire community. It was a focal point for residents of all incomes and from different parts of the city and region. And that's going to be the challenge in our process in reopening this building. In terms of the next phase, next part of the strategy, improving the capabilities of local suppliers, we need to increase business retention and expansion. The capacity study showed that upwards of 20% of existing businesses didn't expect to be in the downtown East Side over the next 5 years. Part of this is for good reason, in that they're expanding and there just isn't the infrastructure for them to expand. Others are suffering under some of the conditions in the community. The first step that has been recommended to us is to really work with those businesses to make sure that we keep as many as possible and to help them expand in the community. Second is to attract new business, working with all the BIAs and the community in a focused way and an explicit plan to do this. To improve the readiness of local suppliers, various forms of capacity building, letting them know about RFPs from government and from larger private firms, and really providing volunteer and contracted mentors to really help improve their capacity. And the combination of these, we believe, will really create the kind of jobs that are needed. In terms of increasing employment opportunities, the Vancouver Agreement does have a focus on local residents, particularly the multivariate ones. And just as one illustration of an organization that we're very familiar with, that has been hiring a lot of people, providing income, United We Can. People who are doing some of the hardest work in the city have created a very vibrant and growing organization that's based on their own principles and their own identity. There are other illustrations of this that we hope to promote and others that are in existence. In addition, we need to work with private firms and the public sector to make sure that we create working environments that people who have had difficulties in the past, once they've received the training and the other supports, really can remain as successful workers in the workplace. So we have a priority of providing jobs for existing residents, but this isn't our only priority. The estimates of our consultants are that if the downtown East Side had the same unemployment rates as other parts of the city, and we hired every person in the downtown east side of working age, they'd only fill between 10 and 15% of all the jobs that would be available. The downtown east side was the downtown of Vancouver. There's tremendous commercial capacity there, tremendous number of jobs. So we want to give priority to local residents, but we also have to make it clear to the community and to the business community that there'll be plenty of opportunities for people to work and others that may want to move and live in the area. Potluck Cafe is another example of an enterprise in the community that hires local residents and provides good support services. So the Vancouver Agreement employment strategy is based on very simple principles. It targets to real jobs that will be available, and it reshapes the way that we do training so that the organizations that will be involved in it will agree to use a common job readiness scale so we can assess how ready people are for jobs, and to measure the effectiveness of different training interventions as they move toward employment and as they get employment to help them stay employed. It's very similar to the Blade Runners model, which was developed a number of years ago by the province and remains a very successful program under the leadership of Access, one of the Aboriginal organizations that manages that program. But a very similar model, and the key to this is case management and real jobs, and then having a way of evaluating different interventions so that we can see which ones are really helping people get jobs and stay employed. To start this initiative, the Ministry of Human Resources has given us over $3 million so we can get the program going. The program will be more expensive than that over time, but we believe it'll be significantly more effective than the current system of delivery. The other part of the Vancouver Agreement proposal, which I'll briefly describe, is the way we want to link the employment strategy and the economic development plan. And that basically is to try to harness the purchase. One of the elements of that is to harness the purchasing power of this community and the business and public sector to the benefit of the downtown east side. And we hope, in doing this, we hope to increase the amount of goods that are purchased from local suppliers, to expand the local enterprises, and increase the number of jobs for local residents. In terms of the next steps, that we'll be taking this plan out very shortly, but in the meantime, we have a number of strategic initiatives that are going on. They're continuing. And there's lots of initiatives that are consistent with this plan that have been well underway. In addition to that, we'll be having intensive public process in February and March, leading to a forum of some of our key community and business partners to review the plan and start coming up with an action plan that we'll be reporting back to you with priority. So we have several months to look at the information in detail and come back with a strategy for what we'll be focusing on next. And by way of conclusion, first, if I can get this to work. Okay. We believe that the downtown east side will revitalize for the reasons I showed at the beginning. It's surrounded by development. It's how it will revitalize. We hope to do it without displacing, but by providing opportunity for local residents. Many of our key strategies are well underway, and I've listed a number of those. And in the next period, we expect to be focusing on the following initiatives in terms of business retention and traction, really increasing housing in the area, linking job training to real jobs, and developing the institutional framework to take advantage of the main economic drivers in the area. So thank you very much. And if there are any questions, we'll have to answer.
Okay with you, Councilor Tony? Thank you very much. I like to see that you're on the side of democracy. It's very great. Thank you. Yes, I do have a couple of questions, and I'd like to be able to move the motion if there are no other questions. How long has the Vancouver Agreement been in existence?
That's a, when did, I think it's 2000? 4 years. This is the 4th year.
2.5 years.
Got another year and a half to go on it, but the actual signing of the document, Councillor Green, I think was 2.5, 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So it has gone back some time, and I am also aware of that, but I find it hard to remember exactly when all this started. And I'm very glad to see the document, but I have to be careful because I'm asking questions, and I'm very aware. The other question is, how long have we seen the ideas of local hiring and local procurement as important to the revitalization of the downtown east side?
Well, this is an idea that even at the time of the development of the Vancouver Agreement was being developed by the provincial government and taken on as one of the issues that at that time was the Social and Economic Development Committee of the Vancouver Agreement was working on.
Thank you. And the last question is, and how long has Woodward's been seen as an essential part of the Vancouver Agreement?
I'd say from day one, from the time that we started working on the Downtown East Side program, we recognized that that was a key feature. And I have to say that there have been probably 4 or 5 major attempts to try to get that building redeveloped.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Some time ago, we were looking at the revitalization of Granville Street. Councillor Green raised the question about looking at the revitalization of Hastings Street. Do you know where that is now?
That's very much part of this plan. What we'll be doing, and we have a lot of the elements of that plan. We have the $75 million worth of heritage incentives that includes the Hastings corridor. We have the city's lease subsidy program. We have potential loans from the programs and others available, and we'll be focusing a lot of our attention on Hastings Street, particularly as Woodward's reopens, because it really gives us the opportunity to attract significant business there.
So the same kind of look that we've had at Granville Street, we will have also at Hastings Street as part of this?
It'll be somewhat different. It's not. I don't think it'll have the same entertainment focus on Hastings Street.
No, but I mean,
saving the heritage buildings. Yes, the key to this is a key part of the economic development is retaining as many of the heritage buildings as we can, reusing them, and not simply tearing down old buildings to make way for new.
And will we have somebody like Jacobs, who is an expert on streets, looking at Hastings the way he has done at Granville?
If that becomes, that hasn't been identified as a need at this time, but as we move forward, that certainly may become possible.
I would ask you as staff to look at that, because I think that that's going to in the long run prove to be a real boon to Granville, and I think it could be a real boon for Hastings, and I thank you, Councillor Green, for having asked for it in the first place. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. To Mr. Edelson, if this plan fulfills all its dreams, what measurable criteria for success will be achieved?
Well, we'll see a significant reduction in the number of vacant buildings in the area, a significant increase in total employment, and increase in the number of local residents that are hired.
Okay, do you know how much has been spent on economic development through the Vancouver Agreement since it started 2.5 years ago?
Most of the investment that's taken place so far has been through the public realm improvements, and we can get a total for that if you want. The other place where funds have been spent are on the foundation of Peach to be a focal point for a federal loans program and the city's lease subsidy program.
Do you have even just a rough idea of how much has been spent there?
It would be so. What do you mean?
We have been getting about $3 million over the last 3 years from WD to do some small public realm improvement initiatives.
So about $3 million.
$3 million.
And could you give me any idea of how many vacancies have been reduced or jobs created or local people employed as a result of that spending?
We'll be updating our monitoring report. We went from about almost half the storefronts on Hastings Street being vacant to somewhat less. But the place where there's been some visible progress now is in Victory Square, and we'll have a counting of that, as well as Chinatown, where a lot of the vacant retail spaces have, over the last year or so, started to come back to life. So we can get, we'll be doing an exact count of that, and that's being monitored every year.
Well, that's good to hear. The money that you mentioned right at the end there, which was not in your report, the $3.25 million from the Ministry of Human Resources, just an aside, I'm a little bit puzzled why the Ministry of Human Resources would be funding economic development, because I thought
That's for employment training.
It's just for employment training.
Yes, it's to help link. We have a job training system that has been developed over the years without clear focused targets and without having explicit jobs to be training people toward. And that's what they're interested in changing, seeing if we can change part of that system so that we can work with a variety of service providers to really measure which interventions are working to get people from where they are now to real jobs.
Well, I understand there are a number of economic development agencies currently working in the downtown east side who are quite anxious because their funding is being held back or something to some extent, and they are calling for some kind of coordination of the spending that's being done while we go through the 6-month process of consultation. Who will be directing that money, the money that's dedicated and on its way today?
That's the Vancouver Agreement Employment Task Team is drawing up contracts right now for the delivery of that money. We're just completing the contract to get the money from the Ministry of Human Resources, and then we'll be putting out RFPs consistent with the objectives of the program. So that's moving ahead now. The chair of that work is Al Thiessen, one of the regional managers for, I think, Human Resources and Social Development Canada.
And will there be any local community groups and businesses involved in having a say on where that money goes?
Yes, I think the key piece that's going to be changing with the Vancouver Agreement as these plans move forward is a more explicit involvement by the business and community organizations in our decision making, because we'll have this process will lead to an agreed upon plan, and there'll be advisory structures that are very explicit to implement that plan, and we'll have more interaction with the community with respect to these decisions.
Well, I understand that after the 6 months is up, but in the meantime, there are a lot of agencies that are doing work there now that are quite concerned about where their next
we'll be meeting with them in February, and that's when we'll be taking the plan out and the discussion, and also starting the work on the institutional, not starting, but trying to get very explicit about the kind of institutional arrangements that will both help us deliver on the training as well as the implementation of other parts of the program, particularly things that will help us capture the potential benefits of the projects like Woodward's, the Convention Center, the casino, and others.
Thank you.
There we go. We're now going to move to a very succinct, tight, and short question with a minimum amount of preamble and debate in advance. Councillor Sullivan.
Oh, Councillor Lewis. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong party, and I'm supposed to keep my comments very brief. So
No, like as lengthy as you like in debate.
Okay. First of all, a lot of work has gone into this, and I congratulate you. But one of my concerns is that I think we're missing a really important key to this whole thing. And Jane Jacobs has written about a business. It's such a wonderful thing. You really, in normal situations, you don't need to encourage it. It happens, and it does. But what it does need is an environment of trust and respect for rules. And unfortunately, the situation in the downtown east side makes that very difficult, especially with the issue of drug addiction. And We see in your report that the businesses rated as their #1 concern safety and security. And unless businesses can operate in a safe and secure environment where rules are respected and there is a high level of trust, it is likely that no matter how much money we pump into this for economic development, we are not going to succeed. So I'm just wondering about that. You didn't really address that, as far as I could tell, very well, and what we can do for political support for the police, for instance, or the Naomi project, and how the Health Canada has consistently obstructed this good proposal. And I'm wondering if you could help relieve some anxiety.
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, we didn't take this out as a City of Vancouver economic plan. We've been working, and it's been hard work. I have to say that our leads, City Manager Judy Rogers, Ardith Paxton-Mann from WD, and Brian Dolson from the provincial government have really worked hard and patiently over the last couple of years for the Vancouver Agreement to really start to take shape. This is one of the first proposals that's coming out in this way. And it requires that the public safety and the health and the housing pieces come together. These are not being developed as isolated plans because we have complex objectives for the community. And you're absolutely right, and we agree, the public safety part of this has to be done. But we've seen over the last year that it has been possible to significantly change the sense of public order on the street. What we've also seen over the last year and a half or 2 years is that it is possible for the city and the other governments to begin to work together on focused initiatives and to work with community groups that were not very trusting with us in the past. Our relationships, particularly in Chinatown, in Victory Square, in Strathcona, have improved measurably, and with us and with the various parts of the residential community, so that we can move forward on projects. And an example, when you're saying about the Naomi project, when that was proposed in Strathcona, we heard from the business community, we heard from the residential community, and we went back to the health authority and said, this is not the right site. It moved to an alternate site, and we believe that it is the right site. We've heard there are some concerns, and we're going to work with those neighbors that have concerns, but the health authority and the Center for Excellence took the time to really reach out to neighbors in a very different way, and we hope to improve those kind of initiatives. The fact that key leaders of Gastown, Chinatown, and the Portland Society and other low-income groups are sitting down to manage the Carroll Greenway is kind of another example. And that we believe those kind of initiatives can help improve the sense of security and safety on the street. There's other work that needs to be done in terms of the policing initiative.
Don't get me wrong about the issue of the placing of it. I thought that was a good move to pull back. I refer to Health Canada's requirement to load up the whole project with costs. I know the project did identify heroin in Britain for $100,000, and they made them go to Switzerland to pay $800,000. So a $700,000 increase just to get a marginal increase in quality of heroin, when right outside the door you've got who knows what sort of garbage is being consumed by. It's quite poor, Councillor Green.
If I could say on that, because Donald McPherson can clearly come and give much more information, but the part that I think the Vancouver Agreement partners at the staff level are particularly proud of is that a couple of years ago, the headlines were what a horrible problem we have in the downtown east side. And I'm not saying we've solved it, but now we have the first safe injection site in North America. We're going to have we believe, the first heroin trial in North America. These are very powerful projects and a shift in the way we do business. The Four Pillars idea a couple of years ago, hardly anybody was thinking in those terms. Everybody was divided. Now we have, I think, a good level of public understanding and support from the three governments for the general notion that we have to do these things in balance and together.
One final question. You did bring up the issue of the casino, and that there was, I was kind of puzzled to see a stipulation in the slot machine proposal that was approved by this council, that it did, that the proposal was actually only a few blocks away from the downtown east side, and that there was a stipulation that people from the downtown east side would work in the casino with the slot machines. And I have to just make a comment or a statement about appropriate work for, we know that the people in the downtown east side.
Well, again, Councillor Sullivan, at the risk of cutting you off, if it's a question,
Yes,
I'm all ears.
I have
If
one
it's a
question.
statement,
Yeah.
you got to save it for
I
debate.
don't make statements in the question periods.
It's a question, is it?
That people who come from downtown east side, there is at least a large addiction problem in the downtown east side, and taking people who are having problems with addiction and putting them in a work site surrounded by addictive slot machines and an environment in which people with addictions have very great difficulty. I wonder if it's appropriate to be putting people with addictive problems into this kind of environment.
I think that there's kind of two answers to that. One is, when there's economic drivers, we hope to set up the institutions that will at least allow the potential for the capturing of appropriate jobs for downtown east side residents and for business, and also the business opportunities for businesses in the downtown east side. And this has to be carefully balanced, because we don't want to make it such a requirement that people are afraid to invest in the community or feel that they're just going to be burdened unfairly with difficult problems. We have to meet our business partners part way on these things. At the same time, when there's opportunities, what you're speaking of, the projects need to be carefully monitored. We believe there's a diversity of people that live in the downtown east side, and we believe that there's many people that could take those jobs. Obviously, it would have to be worked out sensitively and in partnership with the casino owners.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Wedgeworth, please.
In case Councillor Sullivan hadn't noticed, perhaps he should talk to former Mayor Owen about drug addictions all throughout this province and in fact throughout this country. Downtown east side does have people who are drug addicted, so do many other areas of town. There's many people in the downtown east side quite capable of handling various numbers of jobs if they have the chance at them. I am concerned with this report and the fact other reports that have come to council about the downtown east side, that there's no reference to women. And the Vancouver Agreement is very explicit in its statement that women should be engaged in the development of the projects in the downtown east side. And I wonder if you could speak to that, because people today are extremely concerned and once again aware of the violence perpetrated against women in the downtown east side, and that has to do with lack of housing, lack of attention in public protests to the needs of women that are different than the needs of women. I wonder if you could address some of these issues.
I can give a few examples, and in the fuller report, it will be given more emphasis because there are a number of specific initiatives, and we agree with you. But just for one example, we're working with our Vancouver Agreement partners under Wendy Howe's leadership to find a new place, a new location for WISH. And as you know, they've won the Van City $1 million fund, and we're working with them and local residents to find a better facility for them to expand those services, and so that they can work with other groups in the community. This week we're meeting with Atira, a group that's going to be moving into the former site of the Crabtree Daycare Center in the downtown east side, and they have a project that that will in effect help create a social enterprise for a real estate company that'll be a women-based real estate company, and we're going to be partnering with Fast Track to Employment, and we hope to partner with some of the private real estate companies to really bring that about as a women's-based industry. But that's just one of what we hope will be a significant number of initiatives that will meet the needs of women.
I'm afraid this isn't good enough. I'm talking about 60 women being brutalized. God knows how many women had gone missing, and women are being constantly brutalized. I think I need to hear more from staff about this, of what we're working on. This is a serious concern. We've talked about public safety within the context of Vancouver. We're talking about employment opportunities. We're talking about all kinds of things. This should not be a gender-neutral document. I think it's important we put a gender lens on it, and I wonder if there's anything else that we are doing to address these concerns that are terrorizing the people citywide and raising serious concerns about how the city's taking action.
I'm sure that, we, Councillor Wood, so you would have wished that we have gone a lot further than we have, but bring together the government and also the community. One of the progress that we have made so far is like all the community groups now are all working together. So Wish and PACE are now finally coming together, and we do have the mobile van in place. We have hired the project coordinator. The staff are being recruited and trained right now. The service is going to be starting at the end of February. So that's the mobile services. We have worked with our peers and HRDC and got a job training program going on, targeting the sex trade workers. They are on the verge of signing that contract, and so the service could start, in another month. So there are a lot of smaller things that are coming together. We have a document that I have recently just circulated to council members about the women's strategy under the Vancouver Agreement. We're now trying to also leverage other money to come in so that we can do it in a much bigger way. There has been some discussion with neighborhood houses group and with business group who want to come to us and talk about using the four-pillar approach as an approach to look at bringing the whole issues about women in the sex trade, women who are marginalized, and how we can help them. And with the premises that they do not want to be pushing people around from neighborhood to neighborhood. So that's very much, in the beginning of the discussion, and how we can, in a much bigger way, involve the city as a whole, so that the community can come together and look at how we can all work together to help, the marginal women.
So what attempt is there with other groups besides groups already like Peers and Wish and PACE that are working with prostitutes, Carnegie Center, the Portland, other organizations that are have key leadership roles in the community to address the needs of women in the community?
I think all those groups who are in the downtown east side are already involved in their own way. They all are helping out, but it will be key to also bring in, the business groups who are not really thinking about it, the community groups who are not thinking about it, and also groups who are outside of downtown east side to really look at how every neighborhood can help so that women do not have to gravitate down to the downtown east side, that there are actually help for them, and actually there are also alternatives for exiting the sex trade. In this economic document, I can just coming back to it, there's a lot of initiatives that are very much looking at, how do we serve the needs of women, of Aboriginals, of immigrants, but it's not, in details action plan, and that's when the forum comes together in March 2nd and 3rd, that's when we're going to lay out all the details, and the people, business people, as well as, all the different community groups have a chance to say that this is how we can participate, this is what, we will put together that will make a difference for ourselves.
Okay, I would very much appreciate hearing about this as soon as possible, and I think the entire council should hear. It's a strong concern for the community of the downtown east side, and other people are concerned that what is happening to women is a sad statement on our city, and that we're coming forward with gender-neutral documents. The face of that isn't adequate.
And I believe the mayor's office is in the process of trying to organize a briefing for council on, what's happening in the whole area of work with women.
Thank you. I have a few other questions. I'm wondering what we're doing about the parking needs in Chinatown, and whether there's any initiatives to get International Villages and other complexes there that are have been floundering for a number of years.
In terms of the parking, there's been a difference of opinion between some of the Chinatown leaders, but not the majority, and our engineering department about the assessment for the need for additional parking. So we're asking for that to be monitored, but at this time there isn't any proposals to significantly increase the amount of parking. Our engineering department feels that given the kind of growth that's likely to take place, that we'll stay on the current path, but we'll be monitoring that.
Another issue that continues to be raised is access to Crab Park by local citizens. That's quite difficult now.
When I talked about the Carroll Greenway, we talked about linking Maple Tree Square to the Cultural Center and Sun Yat-sen Garden. The ultimate plan is to link waterfront to waterfront. And exactly where the overpass should be will be done in partnership with the port and the community to find the best linkages to serve local residents, but also to link with the activity that will be taking place along the city's waterfront.
Okay. Wendy briefly mentioned Aboriginal people. I wonder if any of these initiatives are specifically targeted to the large Aboriginal community.
Yes, this plan and the document it refers to is linked to the Aboriginal initiatives of particularly the senior governments. Similar staff groups are working together, but we already have partnerships. Work on the Blade Runners project with Access. The First Nations Employment Society has helped on a number of initiatives, and we believe will continue to do so. And that we'll be integrating this with the work of with the Aboriginal community. I think that one of the keys is that if we're successful in setting up a framework that really can employ large numbers of people and get them trained and meet the demands targeted to real jobs, the chances are there's going to be way more jobs than downtown East Side residents will be able to fill in a timely manner. There's a lot of jobs coming up that could be filled, and that we need to blend these programs with the Aboriginal initiatives and also with the Intercity Inclusive Olympics, because there'll be other opportunities coming through that. So that's our hope ultimately, to work very closely with the Aboriginal community.
I am concerned that when you talk about job opportunities, I haven't heard you talk about part-time jobs or jobs that are possible for people that may not be able to work a full.
No, it's the full range. We expect that some of these will be Embers, for instance. We just received their report with a very limited budget and all the difficulties of a startup program. They've incubated 23 businesses over the last year that are still in existence. They're employing 46 people from the downtown East Side on a very small budget. We expect that there'll be a variety of things, some self-employment, some part-time jobs, some social enterprise work, hopefully others, moving people toward employment or at least a sense of independence to live in the community.
I think that's extremely important that we take a good look at that. And finally, what do you think the impact of the upcoming April 1st deadline, the 2-year time limit for people to be on welfare, the impact will be on people who live in the downtown East Side and SRO hotel owners?
Our social planning department is monitoring this. It's something of considerable concern to us, but we don't know yet. And our view is we have to keep moving forward with initiatives that we think make sense. We also need to be developing systems, say with our training programs, that will demonstrate where there's a critical need for training and where we can focus investment. That's what we can do through this economic plan. The provincial government is making some decisions that it believes will benefit the population. We don't control those decisions.
Are we looking at several hundred people being off welfare around April 1st who live in the downtown East Side?
Yes, again, I think social planning has a sense of what those numbers are, and they've been pulling together the information on that, and I believe we've been reporting that, and we'll be reporting that regularly.
Will this not have a serious impact on the SROs and on the nonprofit housing agencies in that community?
It may. We just, at this point, we just don't know. What we can do is continue to work to try to ensure the viability of the SROs as we can, and to try to create the job opportunities and to maximize the resources that are in the community, and to help evaluate things in a way that we can make a case that the senior governments and the business community will support to invest in the services that are needed.
Could we have a report back on the impact of the cuts to income assistance on the downtown East Side, both to the hotel and the nonprofit housing agencies?
I wonder if I could just comment on that briefly. We do have a monitoring going on now through our social planning department, as Nathan has said. We will continue to do that, and we can bring forward another report after April when we do see what the results. We'd already planned to do that. So I just want a clearer understanding of what council would be asking for here.
Could we get Councillor Wentworth's mic? There we go. Go ahead.
Well, I think that the SRO hotel owners did say to us that they were seriously concerned. Even Tourism Vancouver is concerned. I mean, many people have serious concerns about the impact on Vancouver generally, but I think the nonprofit housing organizations and the SROs must be extremely worried, and I'm wondering if we convened a meeting with them to discuss what the impact.
I think we're tracking that now, and we will continue to track it, and we can report out once the changes have occurred. We see what the changes are, and we can come forward with a report, keeping council abreast of what's happening.
So these people know that the hotel owners and the nonprofit housing owners know to contact us, that we would like to work with them on this issue?
I think we have a pretty good relationship with them now, and it wouldn't be too difficult to keep track of that.
Thank you, I hope that we can do that.
All right, we have Councillor Green, second time.
Just a very quick couple of questions. Based on the issues that Councillor Ladner brought up about cost to the revitalization and the results we're getting, and to remind myself that this is a tripartite funding arrangement, and also to ask to make sure that I'm correct here, that when we're talking about downtown East Side through the Vancouver Agreement, we're talking about several different components that a lot of people may not think of as the downtown East Side. Victory Square improvements, for example, improvements to the public realm in Chinatown and Gastown, and improvements that include the three neighborhoods. So we have to be very careful for political reasons in the costing of how much of that has gone to the downtown East Side. So I stressed that I think it would be, or I asked, wouldn't it be very important that we're very clear that those dollars aren't seen as dollars that go to the downtown East Side, but to the downtown East Side area, in some areas where the downtown East Siders have no relationship whatsoever.
We can do an explicit accounting of where those funds have been going, because, as I said, many of them have been public realm improvements, and we believe, though, that the Victory Square improvements are part of the fabric of the downtown East Side. It's a park that's being used by the entire community. Clearly, in the area near closer to Main and Hastings, there's a lot of improvements that are needed and investments being made.
I think what I'm trying to ask is, isn't it true, though, that it's very hard to cost out how much of that money went to the downtown East Side? The improvements for Victory Square, which are great, also are there so that we can have Remembrance Day and other events for the whole city. And very quickly, a final question is the Woodbridge Parkade, is it considered to be part of the Vancouver Agreement, or is that a Vancouver-only project?
I think there's a term that we use in the spirit of the Vancouver Agreement, and some items are explicit agreements there, but we've been working together. Clearly, the city is the lead on that. It's our building. We've done a lot to attract the Storium, but there's other governments that will be investing in the job training and some of the specific requests that the Storium and others have had.
Would it be correct, though, to say that when in other things like the Vancouver Agreement, that the city is a minor partner relative to the other levels of government in terms of expenditures, but in terms of the Gastown Parkade, we are a major partner and a couple of minor partners?
I have to say that if you take that item and the $75 million worth of heritage improvements that the city has contributed, as I've often taken to the table with the Vancouver Agreement, we're significant players in the revitalization.
Okay, and so that the Vancouver, would it be correct that the Woodbridge Parkade, for example, may employ Blade Runners and some other people down the road, which is a benefit, but clearly the major benefactor of that would be Gastown?
Yes, so they expect to double the advertising budget of any other attraction in the Vancouver region to attract between 1 million and 1.5 million visitors a year. It will reshape the kind of the way that Gastown is used.
Yeah. And so we will be able to look at, when Councillor Ladner is looking at the expenditures that have gone into the downtown East Side, we'll clearly be able to compare that with the expenditures that have gone into the general neighborhood with projects such as Woodbridge Parkade. Thank you.
Councillor Cadman.
Thank you. First of all, let me commend you on the report. I thought it was very good. And Chinatown was the major shopping area for the city of Vancouver, that people would actually go down there in large numbers to make their purchases.
That's right.
And that was significantly affected by the opening up of malls in the surrounding jurisdictions, and that in fact led to the economic collapse of that area.
That's right. The economy of the area was structured a lot as being the regional focus. As the region grew, its monopoly on some of those services changed. And similar things happened in Chinatown as well.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be the only place you could buy certain products. Now they're readily available in different parts of the region, and particularly in Richmond.
So in order for the economic revitalization, in fact, to work, there's going to have to be a way in which people decide to come back to that neighborhood. And if you look at places like Seattle with Pioneer Square and the Pike Market, or Portland where they've done a sort of revitalization of their heritage area, it's a certain character that effectively gets people to come back there. So we're going to have to create that kind of a unified economic draw that begins to bring people down into that area.
Yeah. The plan will actually talk in more detail than I've been able to go through today, but it really tries to build on the historic character of the area. We've had some people say we should just raise the densities and the heights and let the area be demolished. We believe that the competitive economic advantage for the downtown east side is in its historic character. Its ability to start new enterprises, to link to the many educational institutions that are nearby, to link with the many cultural institutions that are there, and to really rebuild from those strengths, as well as the fact that with the changes in our industrial lands, that this is one of the places that's very strategically located near the port, near the downtown, to provide a whole array of commercial services, manufacturing services for the city and region.
I guess what I want to explore a little bit is the implications of a time when people would go to a sort of a main street and do their shopping along that street, to a time when people have now moved to shop in a mall, to a time when people are moving to shop in big box stores, to a time in the future where I guess many people may in fact be doing their shopping online. And how do we sort of position this area to be prepared for that kind of economic shift?
I think we're doing further studies on the retail capacity, and there's one that will be coming out shortly. What some of the consultants are saying is that as we're increasing the residential densities in the downtown, and that we intend to attract more market housing to the downtown east side, that's part of this plan, that we're going higher, we're getting more density for residential, that people in the urban situations like to do street shopping, and that land is going to become increasingly valuable, and that's going to be part of the lifestyle. And some of the things that are happening in the Chinatown revitalization, there's explicit work being done so that Chinatown can better advertise to its market neighbors in Citygate, False Creek, Strathcona, because it didn't have to in the past, and now it's starting to do that. You can see the signs that are translated, and we're going to be working with them to step up those initiatives so they can really take advantage of the people, not take advantage in a negative way, but take advantage of the opportunities to serve the people, the thousands of people that now live within walking distance of Chinatown and Hastings Street.
I guess the other issue is we're doing the Vancouver Area Transit Plan this year, and I look at something like the trolley, the downtown trolley. To what extent is that transit plan and that trolley initiative, and conceivably achieving it prior to the Olympics, a key component of having people be able to get down there easily by public transit?
The plan supports that. When we talked about linkages to other neighborhoods, I focused on the Carroll Greenway because it's of particular importance right now. But right at Columbia, 1 block away, is where that would link Chinatown and Gastown to False Creek and to the downtown. We see it as a very important initiative and one that we'd like to get underway as soon as it can be afforded. There is planning going on for the management of traffic and the appearance of those routes, but we need the support to actually get the project underway.
We've heard in meetings with the cultural groups that are working down there as part of the mayor's forum on the budget, that the whole perception of security down there is a huge issue. And obviously when you see as many women go missing, and you see the kind of situation that's arisen more recently with assaulting women to the downtown east side, to what extent is getting that perception beat a key component for people feeling comfortable going down there and making it their neighborhood, particularly in the evenings?
the perception of safety, as well as, we want the reality of safety. There's no question, as Councilor Woodworth has said, we need that, and it's one of the marks that we have to, we have to improve on. But there has been, the feedback that we've gotten from residents and business people in different parts of the downtown east side is that the recent policing initiatives, in combination with a lot of the enforcement work that our city staff have done on the problem premises, are really beginning to have an impact. And there was a genuine sense this last year, I think Judy Graves said it best, for the first time in 3 years she saw someone napping in Pigeon Park. It was an indicator that there was a level of safety that people would actually do that. And if you go by the Carnegie Center, the strategies are working. You can get into the Carnegie Center without that whole focal point of the drug trade. It's raised other issues, but the general sense is that at least we can start to manage the problem. We have a long way to go to solve it.
To what extent does culture play a role in bringing people into that area to enjoy that area and getting them more comfortable with being there?
When we talk about building on the strengths of the existing community, Chinatown is the cultural, Richmond may have a larger economy right now, but Chinatown is clearly the cultural heart, not just for the people who live in the downtown east side, but it's where the family clans are located, where the major institutions are. We need to build on that. It's also the focal point for the Aboriginal community, for the region's low-income community and the various groups that make that up. The notion of the culture of the neighbors, people have lived in that neighborhood, diverse people for many, many years, quite compatibly. And what we're hoping through this plan is to build on the different cultures that are there so that they can express themselves and continue to do so into the...
Yeah, I guess what I was really getting more at was the performing arts, if you put it that way. The idea of more festivals being an attractor to get more people down there so that they feel, I know some of the work that's been done in Blood Alley, some of the work that's been done with Public Dreams Society, those kind of things that get people sort of down there and feeling more comfortable with actually being in the neighborhood.
Very much so. And the thousands of people have come back over the last year and a half to Blood Alley, to many different events, Victory Square, the Chinatown cultural events. But we also have the Fire Hall Theater. There may be opportunities, hopefully for the private sector, to do something with the Pantages Theater. There are hundreds and hundreds of artists that live there. So that is a key component, both in terms of economic development, but also relates to our healthcare initiatives. Initiatives like the historic markers were a very powerful place for the addicted population to really contribute to express their view of the history of the city and to do it in a beautiful way that's going to be there for quite some years. So the arts and the Carnegie anniversary really build the community pride and the sense of activity and common purpose that's needed. One of the most powerful events that I was at was when Chinatown raised $20,000 to support the Carnegie Arts Initiative. It's something that, and another one was when the historic markers were placed right in the heart of the courtyard of the Sun Yat-sen Gardens. Those are very powerful statements by the community that they want to work together as neighbors.
Good. Thank you very much.
Councilor Lilly.
Councilor Green and I were just having a discussion about how much we each raised at that fundraising. And I was the one with the trophy, so.
It's all recorded for precedent.
Following up on some of Councilor Cadman's questions regarding the area in general, downtown east side, and it encompasses quite a large area. He touched on some things such as drawing consumers to the area that traditionally came to the area and now have stay in their areas because of the developments in their local areas. And you also touched on rather than drawing consumers, there's been some thought about densifying the area and tearing down and rebuilding. But how much thought has been given to targeted density points, I guess, in terms of not tearing down, because this council's moved significantly towards revitalizing the area by extending the heritage incentives from Gastown to both Chinatown and the Hastings corridor. But how much more have we got in the works in terms of targeted density expansion?
We believe there's a considerable capacity. Now, I'll give this figure out. It's a preliminary estimate, but we've been looking at the development sites just in historic Chinatown. And primarily through the vacant sites, we could accommodate of the order of 10,000 people there. That's not to say that 10,000 people housing for them will develop over the next short period, but we're really looking at where are there opportunities for market housing, and there's considerable opportunity without destroying the historic fabric. A good portion of that will be in heritage buildings. That's what we hope to be one of the main uses, to save those buildings. But also there are vacant sites or underutilized sites that could accommodate considerable population. There's a consultant study that's being done specifically for the Chinatown sites, but the implications of that will be used for other parts of the historic areas.
So that would be the plan then. We're starting in Chinatown, looking at the capacity, and then using that as the template and expanding it to the...
Well, we also have other initiatives. For instance, there's a discussion this week about a proposal to put housing in the Corrette building in Gastown at Columbia and Water, and Columbia and Cordova, that will bring considerable housing. We've already developed the old spaghetti factory building, the Malkin building. So there's other initiatives in other parts of the city, of the community. Strathcona, there's been a significant, just market-initiated development of new market housing in different parts of the Strathcona residential area.
And to be clear, that is market housing we're talking about. So, with the Chinatown parking issue, and you've articulated that there's a difference of views, but I had asked previously, about 6 months ago, well maybe not 6, but 3 months ago now, for a report or a memo back in terms of looking at the possibility of either eliminating or reducing the costs of parking in Chinatown, particularly as a business incentive for the area. And I understand that in your report today you stated that the number of vacant sites both along Hastings and in Chinatown have decreased, and that's a good sign. But I'm wondering where that report is, because I did ask for it about 3 months ago.
We'll check with our colleagues in engineering and report back on that as part of this work.
In addition to that, I believe it was Councillor Green. Yes.
With all due respect, Councillor Louis, I believe you did get a memo back on parking meter, and we haven't moved it forward, but I believe we did advise you of some of the issues with differential parking rates in different parts of the community. Probably November.
I'll have to check.
So no, I'd be happy to go back and pull a memo out for you, but I believe that our engineering, city engineer did respond.
Okay, sorry. Then perhaps this one. I believe Councillor Green asked for a creative tax structuring of our property taxes as a disincentive for vacant storefronts. Did we get a report on that one?
There's a proposal in the plan to look at how taxation can be used to, so we'll be reporting back through that.
Okay. And lastly, on the issue of the April 1st deadline for the welfare cuts, I believe that Minister Murray Cole, I'm not sure whether he's still the minister or not. He's no longer? The former minister now had responded that we would get some information by the end of January. And seeing as it's only a couple of days before the end of January, I'm wondering where that's at, because it is important, rather than reporting after the fact, it is important that we get the information as early as possible so we can mitigate any positive negative impacts to our city. And, it's been highlighted today that safety is a particular issue, and in order to put the resources in place, we need to know as soon as possible.
As council is aware, the request from social planning to get specific numbers has not been met. Where council requested that social planning asked for those that would be cut off April 1st and a projection over the next 6 months of how many people might be, who have their 2-year time frame completed and then would be cut off. Those numbers have not been forthcoming. We're requested to get the numbers of single parents who had children over 3 years who would lose benefits, and
there's a duck in the house.
I believe we have a cell phone on in our presence.
So we don't have exact numbers. There's been speculation of leaked information that the community has been reporting, and I believe again got circulated to council, but we cannot confirm those numbers that the community circulated. We do know that the numbers of people on welfare has gone down. Where people have gone is again a speculation, whether they've gotten jobs, left the province, or moved to other places. So the exact data that council is requesting, we do not have, and at this point, we're not sure whether we'll get, although with the change in cabinet, there's the opportunity to again request the information again. But certainly, there's concern everywhere you go, whether it's single parents or concerns from community groups who are worried that those people who are cut off will put more pressure on their services.
So with the change in fresh faces, perhaps a fresh request
We will make,
would be in order.
we will be making another request this week and see if we can get more specific information. It is, I do want to say, it is very difficult for the ministry to get exact numbers because the welfare numbers do move and change. What I think would be more useful is, instead of exact numbers, the approximations and projections would probably be more useful for us, and that's what we will request.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Green, you've been very patient.
Thank you. I'm hoping that that's the end of question period and that I may move a motion.
I am ruling at the end
Well,
of questions, and I'm urging you to move the motion.
Well, for once, I respect your unilateral decision. I would like to move A and B, which is to receive the plan and to have it go out for public input. And I'll take a moment to say a couple of things about it. First of all, I appreciate the work, and I know it's been a long slog, and you're at first base now, you have still a lot to do. So thank you all, thank all the staff that has worked on this. But I was hoping, as I said, that we would just be able to receive this and go ahead without all of the questions and the length of time. But I'm prepared to stay here till 4 a.m. since we don't have to pay extra parking after 8 o'clock right now, so we can be here as long as we want. The other issue that I have to report to is one thing that Councillor Louis pointed out, is the idea of a reverse taxation for neglected and unoccupied storefronts. And just I want to let everyone know that that was not my idea. I received an email about it from the husband of an ex-NPA counselor. So I give full credit to that relative of an NPA person. And then I want to bring up, and I think it's a good idea. I mean, he had observed this in the UK and thought it had worked really well a few decades ago. Whether it would work here or not, I don't know, but I think it's worth looking at. I need to, once again, last meeting, I was pretty upset about some of the Ladner-Sullivan allegiances here that led to some extremely derogatory ideas and images of downtown East Siders. And somebody who moved into 412 East Cordova in 1972, I consider myself a downtown East Sider and feel personally slagged by some of these statements, and also for the work that I've done. First of all, Jane Jacobs. You know, Jane Jacobs is one of the most important people in North America. Not in North America. So many Nobel laureates have mentioned that Jane Jacobs has inspired them to do their work. We know that there wouldn't be Manhattan the way it was if it wasn't for the battle between Moses and Jacobs, that Jane Jacobs won, thank God, and so did we. The Spadina Expressway, they didn't go into there. The whole idea that Larry Beasley so successfully put into the zoning and planning of our city came from Jane Jacobs. And incidentally, for Larry, I want to say that Jane Jacobs told me that she thinks he's the best planner in North America, and that's very good. But you can also raise the name of Jane Jacobs to fight against the concepts of Jane Jacobs. And Councillor Sullivan says that Jane Jacobs would not be supportive of some of the things we've heard today in terms of job creation, that government cannot create jobs, and those kind of statements. Well, just for the record, I'd like to say that having had the great opportunity to know Jane for quite a few years, and being a person that worked on these issues when I was working for the provincial government, that I had the opportunity to go to Toronto on several occasions and take these documents to Jane Jacobs for her review. She also visited us in Vancouver, and I sat with her for several hours in the Four Corners Community Savings to discuss what we were trying to do through the Vancouver Agreement, and I can tell you that Jane is utterly supportive of what we're doing here. I would also suggest that those who are not really familiar with her work should be familiar with it, because it's some of the most important work that's coming around today. Councillor Cadman has pointed out the role of arts and culture in society and in the downtown east side for transforming that community. And again, those things came from Jane Jacobs and are now being carried forward by people like Richard Florida. So we're very lucky to have this great Canadian human being on our side. But she also talks about in a book called Systems of Survival, about a woman named Alana Probst down in Portland, Oregon, that worked on many kinds of concepts, that many of the ideas that we have today came directly from Alana's work. So to say that that Jane Jacobs would not approve of what we're doing is utterly incorrect. It's more than that, it's false. But that doesn't really upset me. That's just a correction that we can make for history. But what does upset me is the concept of, my gosh, what did we do here? We were so weird last time that when we approved the going ahead with the casino, that we actually asked to have local hiring built into the approval process. And let me back up a little history. First of all, the Olympic bid has built into the guarantee section that we will have local hiring and local procurement, signed off by 3 levels of government. We have the same agreement with the City of Vancouver and the province of British Columbia and the federal government that we will have local hiring and local procurement for the Trade and Convention Center expansion. And these are things that we're doing to give economic opportunities to people in downtown Eastside that haven't had them before. And one of the reasons they haven't had them before is the exact attitude that the NPA had on this council and is still trying to keep alive the fact that downtown Eastsiders, we heard, cannot be entrepreneurial, that opening a door for people and holding your hat out for a tip is not entrepreneurial. Councillor Sullivan says it's intimidation. And now we hear that downtown Eastsiders can't work in a casino because of addictions that they have. And that therefore we're incorrect again to put people into a position where they'll fail. Well, let me tell you, it's too bad that Councillor Sullivan wasn't at GM Place the last time I was there, where people in the downtown east side, some 200, got jobs there through a program that we had in the downtown east side, and we're working there, of all things, selling beer. And they didn't seem addicted to me, they weren't drunk, they weren't falling down, and neither were they at Live Out. When you went and they were the ushers and they were the waiters in the bars, they were selling hard liquor and wine, and none of them were drunk or overly addicted from anything that I could see. There's a woman in the downtown east side who was on welfare and raised 2 children there, who has now developed on around $30 million worth of social housing in that community. So once again, we have this dead, old, rotten, threadbare concept that people in downtown east side can't work. They cannot improve their conditions in their community, and we see it every day with things. Again, I have to bring up United We Can. Ken Leote, of all people I know that started United We Can, the downtown east side, deserves the Order of Canada. And then again, we're going to have this, we can't do it, it won't work. Downtown Eastsiders don't have the abilities. Now it's addiction problems, they can't work. They can't be entrepreneurial. Let's bury this. I would say to you guys, please, come on. You know, I mean, it's insulting, and I think it doesn't do you well to be coming up with these attitudes. This last one by Councillor Sullivan, I just find it so offensive I can hardly stand here and speak to it. And I say to you, please don't keep doing this, because every time you slander the people of that community, I'm going to stand up here and spend as much time as the mayor or the deputy mayor will allow me defending that community, the entrepreneurial spirit that is there, the caring that people have for one another, and the knowledge and understanding of what needs to be done that far outreaches some of the knowledge and understanding that we see here. Did I move the motion? I move A and B.
Councillor Ladner.
Your Worship, I'll resist the temptation to answer these kind of offensive, unsubstantiated allegations against me in particular, and Councillor Sullivan, but I will stay to the point. On this motion, I'm somewhat puzzled by the number one objective of this plan, if I can get back to the revitalization plan that we were talking about earlier. Increased demand for the downtown east side's products and services. And I don't quite understand how you do that. I mean, if you have a restaurant, people either come there or they don't come there, and I don't know how you can increase the demand for the services you provide at that restaurant. Go out and tell people, okay, fine. But if the restaurant food is not great, people will not come there no matter how much you advertise. And I would much rather see, could we just keep in order here? I would much rather see something where it says increase the quality of the downtown east side's products and services so people are naturally drawn to them. The market will take care of it. People will come, because if you have a product or service that has some inherent problems with it, I don't know how you can increase the demand for it if the product or service does not measure up. And I think we should be aiming at having products and services there that will meet or beat anybody else's products and services, use the great talents that Councillor Green is talking about, and deliver the services that people want, rather than worrying about subsidizing or having some kind of forced procurement to require people to buy things they wouldn't otherwise buy.
I have to say that...
Well, no, actually, we're in debate, and I'm assuming Councillor Ladin will correct me if I'm wrong. You're not asking a question, you're debating, is that right?
No, I didn't ask a question, I just said I have some doubts about...
Which is fair, you're certainly entitled to that, but I don't think we're gonna invite answers to the questions in debate. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would also like to warn of there's a sort of a tendency in this document to be covering social bases as well as economic purposes, and Councillor Woodsworth's concerns are more than legitimate and valid, but I don't know if we should be addressing those when what we're trying to do here is create jobs and provide some economic activity. And it was somewhat disconcerting to read that 1 out of the 5 businesses now located in the downtown east side are planning to move. And those people are, I think, the key to this whole enterprise. That if we can't get the proven, non-subsidized private sector employers to stay, to increase their employment, to hire local people, then we're doomed. And to have a lot of subsidized social agencies creating cafes and things that need a lot of public money to keep going, I don't think is the answer in the long run, and I think we have to keep our eye on that. And the final point I'd like to make about this is that when I took a quick perusal of the Ferencz-Weichert report that was done a year and a half ago and covered a lot of the same ground, there's something in it which I did not see but which did appear here, and that was a social agenda to add low-income housing to the downtown east side. And I think from a job creation point of view, that's a mistake. I think we need low-income housing. I think we need it all over the city, but we don't need more in the downtown east side. And the reason is, I refer to the comment in this document that there is a small local market. And when you read the fine print, it turns out it's not a small local market, it's a small median income. And without a higher median income, you can't support local businesses. And in order to have a higher median income, you can't add people with a lower median income. It doesn't add up. And I think that we have to also be aware that creating a higher concentration of low-income housing in this one area attracts vulnerable people, and they in turn attract the predator economy of the drug dealers and the quick check artists and all the unsavory people who are now quite happily thriving in a very prosperous business atmosphere in a very negative direction right down there right now. So, and if we have to address the number one point that was keeping these private sector people away, deterring investment and encouraging them to leave, it was safety and security. And I think that by adding low-income housing, you're increasing the chance that the safety and security issue will be compromised. In fact, it will become more of an issue. So I would congratulate Mr. Edelson and the authors of this plan for getting the 3 levels of government together. I think they've done a great job, and I know there's a lot of difficulty behind this that is not obvious from someone who just reads the plan. It's wonderful that we're going ahead with Woodward's. I think the proposal for more market housing is a great idea, and I think the incentives to ease constraints to investment, including Councillor Green's ideas, and I'm happy to hear they have some kind of NPA provenance. One thing that has not been mentioned, but I understand from talking to people there, is absolutely critical, is to secure the industrial zoning. And I know I'm happy to see that's in the report. because a lot of those businesses don't know whether the zoning will continue, so they don't know whether they should stay and renew their leases. It's great that the Chinatown revitalization has been going, and I thought that the parade last week was a great testimony to the success there. It's not always obvious, but maybe one of your indicators should be the number of people who come out to the Chinatown New Year's Parade. And the Carroll Street Greenway. So a lot of good positive things, but I would caution that we've got to keep our eye on the self-supporting private sector employers who are going to be key to making this happen. And if we don't keep their needs in mind, they'll not be able to do the work that has to be done to help lift the whole community up. But I will support the record.
Councillor Sullivan.
Oh, well, it's somewhat disorienting when Councillor Green insults me and misrepresents my words and then disappears. So
hang in there, hang in there.
But I'll just, a couple of comments he did make that I did feel I needed to correct. That I know Councillor Green has said in past meetings that he thought that my questioning his proposals was offensive, and he wished that we would have less questioning and let these proposals sail through. In fact, in the previous council meeting, he did say that he thought that I was insulting democracy by asking tough questions, and I had to remind him that asking tough questions is not an insult to democracy, it is democracy. That's what this is about. So I do hope my questions will be and my comments will be taken seriously. Councillor Green and I have to compete with each other. He lived in the downtown east side. I was on welfare for a number of years, living in social housing, and I'm not proud of it. I'm not ashamed of it either. And I do recognize that many people do run into tough times, and I think that we need to do everything we can to help people, and there's a lot of talented people in the downtown east side. Absolutely. I didn't mean to assume that Jane Jacobs would support or not support any project here. I simply was quoting one of her works. I also know Jane Jacobs. I had a pleasant afternoon on her porch. The woman who revived the porch as an icon, and I had a chance to talk to her about some of these things. And, but I certainly do not want to portray that I'm representing her views. And finally, the focus on the downtown east side, and I do see we're starting to act like a ward council already. Everybody's sort of grabbing their own wards and starting to grab their turf, and it's kind of interesting for me to watch this happen before my eyes. But the idea that I did want to bring up was asking that downtown east side residents be mandated, in fact, that the casino be mandated to hire people from another neighborhood, from another ward, is a ludicrous idea. In fact, I think it's got more to do with the overturning of the long-term city policy of keeping out expanded gambling. And this proposal, this casino proposal, is a very ugly duckling, and I think to put a little nice ribbon on it was to ask that this proposal, the casino with all the slot machines, would have downtown east side people working in it, and I just think it's a wrong idea. I do hope that this initiative goes forward and meets with success. I did bring up some of my concerns, and I wish you well. Thank you.
Mr. City Clerk, the next speaker is absent. Could you please turn his mic off? Councillor Bass.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'd like to say that Jane Jacobs would not know me from Adam.
We have an honest councillor in the room. An honest councillor. Please proceed.
And secondly, I'd like to say that I really am enthusiastic about Councilor Ladner saying that he wants to see social housing not concentrated in one area, and I look forward to our developing social housing all through the city. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
All right, Councillor Green, we proceeded without your absence, but your light was on. Did you want me to come back to you?
I missed Councillor Sullivan's rebuttal, and I'm very sorry about that.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you, Councillor Sullivan. The more that you talk, the more contributions come into Cody. Thank you.
All right, no other debate. All in favor, all opposed, and the motion carries unanimously. Mr. City Clerk, we've now wrapped up the 2 report references, and I made my second error of the afternoon. We've not yet passed a motion approving all of the consent items. And I'm looking at Councillor Stevenson. Would you be interested, Councillor Stevenson, in moving all of the recommendations contained in administrative reports A1 to A7, with the exception of A6, which would be moving receipt for information purposes only? Is there any debate on that? None. All in favor, all opposed, and it carries unanimously. Held for discussion, debate, item A8. Councillor Stevenson? Your mic is not on. Oh, there we go.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A8, I would like to move when the appropriate time comes.
Now? You can move it right now and get it started.
All right. I will move recommendation A and recommendation C.
All right, A and C have been moved. Do you wish to comment?
Please.
Go ahead, go ahead.
It's too bad the children have left because I think they were all here. Oh, there they are. But still here. They've been very patient. Hasn't it been exciting so far, though? The Millennium Sport Facility Society is a unique partnership between two non-profit recreation groups. The Phoenix Gymnastic Club and the Pacific Indoor Bowls Club. The Society has received an allocation of parkland for a new joint use building in the Nat Bailey Stadium Park. It will contain space on the lower levels for an indoor lawn bowling facility, and on the upper level, a gymnastics program space. The city councilors will own the building, but it will be operated by the two groups. This facility represents an important collaboration between groups in the community and government, serving actually as a model for partnering to create recreation infrastructure in the city of Vancouver. The park board, with the council's support, contributed lands and funds for relocation of the lawn bowling.